everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. Today I'm painting Owen from Massive Darkness by Cool Mini or Not. This didn't win the Patreon votes, but it was pretty high up in the list, and I thought I'd give you a little treat and do multiple Massive Darknesses this month. So starting off with Owen in white primer by Vallejo. That's just applied with a brush because as normal I didn't want to go outside. I'm then going to use Survivor Skin. This is by the Army Painter, and I'm using my regiment brush here and applying that to all the parts of the skin you can see on this model. So that's his face and his hands, and that's it on this one. So quite a quick, easy amount of skin to apply there. I'm not being too careful, it's the first bit of paint to put on the model. Next up is Bright Gold by the Army Painter, and this is to paint the majority of his, well, all of his armour, but and the majority of the model. This bit's going to take quite some time. The gold's fairly weak and needs multiple coats. You can see there I'm applying it and it's the white still showing through, so it's going to take 2 to 3 coats. Do a couple off camera for you to speed up some of this footage. Using the regiment brush still, it's quite easy, not being too neat. It's quite easy to paint over, but I am having to continually check the reference card to work out which bits are supposed to be gold. Next up is Crusted. This is the Army Painter. So this is the blood effect, the sort of deep red, which I think looks quite maroonish. It's certainly the closest I had to his cloak colour, and then I thought as soon as I apply the wash, that's really going to turn into the exact colour I want from the reference art, or at least that's what I was hoping. You'll have to decide for yourselves when we get to the end if that looks close enough to his actual cloak colour or not. I think already without any shader it's starting to, that's not far off that purpley colour of his cloak. I just don't have many purples. Maybe I should invest in some more. I've only got the one from Vallejo, that royal purple, so that was definitely not the colour I wanted. So still using the regiment brush here, just being a little bit careful around all of his sorts of straps and belts, and then obviously ultra careful around any of the gold that I've already applied 2 to 3 coats to there. So certainly don't want to be getting into this deep red on top of it, as that's going to take a lot of coats to cover back over, so careful with that bit. Next is a leather brown, again by the Army Painter. I'm trying to use a lot of the Army Painter's colours here, just for anyone following along with that set. I'm using my detail brush now, so I've switched down to a smaller brush, and this is to paint in those belts and straps. So he's got the one across his chest, the one around his waist, and then that one across like his thigh, holding those pieces of random gold, which I forgot to paint so far, but I will fill them in later on. But it doesn't really matter because they're so small anyway. The highlight would be the majority of the colour you want. You're not really going to want to shade them down anyway. I'm also going to be using this level brown for his hair and get him a couple of eyebrows in there as well. Next is Elf Green, another Army Painter one. I'm doing very well for not mixing and matching in this video. That's to paint on his sleeping bag. I'm guessing that's just below his shield on the back, and then after I've done that I'm just going to use that leather brown just to add 2 straps to that sleeping bag for realism. Claymore Blade, Army Painter's one, the light silver. This is to do the buckles on all of the straps we just painted. His massive shield on his back, so use the detail brush for the buckles because they're a bit fiddly, and then whip out the regiment brush, and that's for the shield and both of his sword blades. So colour those in very easily and very quickly. Finally, we're on to, at last, we're on to shading the model, and I'm using Survivor Shader, and I'm going to apply this to all of the metal, so his swords and his armour and his shield. I always use the black, well, nearly always use the black. I think it gives a nice tarnished look to metal. I'm also going to do all the browns, so his hair and the straps that I can get to. Then I decide I'll also do his sleeping bag, get it quite a dark shade. I was contemplating using a green wash there just to make it easier to highlight up, but then I just thought I just want this model to look quite dark, and then after all that I was like, yeah, I'll do the robes as well, just get it just get a nice dark one. I was contemplating using red there. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you think red would have been better, but because I was going for that sort of maroony purple look, I did think the black shade's probably good here. And that's after he's dried, and then swapping to my green background so you can see how long this model's taken me to start and finish. So I think a few other people have done Owen on YouTube, and I started it before anybody else released the videos, and then saw that other people have done it and just thought, is there any point in me doing this one? But seeing as he was half finished, I thought, let's crack him out. So you guys will have to do a massive favour, thumbs up this video if you like it. Let us know this is the better one on YouTube if you think it is. So that was just highlighting up back the base colour of the Survivor Skin, just bringing back in the colour on all the raised parts, but being quite generous with that one. I was just where the shader settled and I didn't want it. Then it's leather brown. I'm using the detail brush for all of this so far. and I'm just highlighting up all of his straps, the handle of his swords, the brown bits, and his hair and his eyebrows there. Then I remembered I'd got this handy model holder that I'd been trialing, and I thought this is perfect now. I'm going to be doing some very, very fine detailing on his skin. So it's allowing, you can see the sort of strain I'm putting it under. My fingers look quite tense, so I'm trying to keep it very, very still as I take this leather brown and apply it as accurately as I can to sort of each part, each strand, each grouping of his hair, just highlighting back in that base colour. And then I'm going to take Brainmatter Beige, which I didn't do in the base coat, and just give him some teeth. So just very, very carefully painting in his teeth, avoiding all the skin on his lips. Don't want to catch that by mistake. So after getting his eyebrows back in and his teeth in, we're going to take Survivor Skin, mix that with Brainmatter Beige, about 60-40, so not quite as much Brainmatter Beige as Survivor Skin. And then I'm going to apply very thin lines to all the very most raised areas. So that's his ears, his cheekbones, the tip of his nose, his chin. And then I'm going to do all of his knuckles and just blend that down back across the back of his hands there. We're also going to do his fingertips on the front of the sword. Next out is Crusted Sword, just painting back in the base colour for his robe. So applying quite generous lines, quite thick lines along the edges and all the raised parts of this cloak. So just painting back in the base colour where I don't want the shader to settle. So just leaving the shader in the recesses, painting all the raised areas just back up, just giving it a little bit of a highlight, just making it look a bit more 3D, more realistic here. So this again is going to take quite a long time, but most of the model is just the robe. So I'm going for some very, very subtle highlights here. I'm not going to make him pop too much, but I will apply an additional highlight once this has dried. So he will pop a little bit more than this, but I'm trying to be subtle. I'm trying to go for something different to all those other YouTube videos you can watch of this model. Give you a little bit of variety, so you can watch them. Maybe find some interest in this one if you've already watched those previous ones. So yep, taking my time, and then after that's done, Crusted Sword mixed with Brainmatter Beige, about 50-50. This gives quite a light maroon. I don't know what colour that would be. It's almost pinkish, but I think it's still, the tone's right, and I think it does give it, it's still quite a subtle highlight, but I'm just catching the very edges now, mainly along the bottom of his cloak, and all very thin lines on all of the folds in his robe. And I think this is just giving it a little bit more realism. I think it's very subtle again, but it looks pretty good by the end, and yeah, he's going to be very, very good on the table. So his hoods especially, there's a lot of folds in his hood, so that's a bit time consuming. Care must be taken there. After I finish the robe though, so that's the robe now finished, so if you like it, brilliant. If you don't, it's not going to get any better, I'm afraid. But we take back out the bright gold by the army painter, and we're going to highlight up all of his gold armour. So you want to catch all of the raised bits as normal, so that's like his kneecaps especially, his toe caps. I'm painting on those white bits that I mentioned. I'm not sure what they are, like dangly bits of metal. You know, most of us have those somewhere in our wardrobe. And then all of the raised bits along like the edges of each part of his armour. This armour's sort of like plate mail, and it's built up of various plates. So yeah, just catch each edge, each raised bit. He's got a few spikes sticking out to catch. He's got a bit of decoration around the edges, so just try to very, very carefully sort of dry brush a little bit across that. I'm also painting in the hilts of his sword, yeah, I know a word, and also the pommel of both those swords as well. They're both gold. His elbows, his wrist guards, I'm getting quite a bit on it because I think it looks like the light would be catching most of that, but mainly along the edges of all of the wrist guards as well. Next is highlighting up the Claymore blade with Claymore blade. So once that shadow settled, you can just highlight it up. So I'm going for a highlight along the edge of both sides of the blade, the tip of the blade, and then the center raised part of the blade. That'll be the same on both swords, although he's got two different swords. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I like my, if I was carrying swords, I think I'd like them to be symmetrical. I'm just fashionable in that way, I guess. So he's making a statement. He's got different swords. How do you guys feel about that? Is there a reason for it? Let me know in the comments. His shield there, so I was painting the highlight around the whole edge of the shield as well as all those rivets around the edge, and catching a bit on all of the raised parts of the sorts of dints and cracks. Elf green's back out, and that's just to paint back in the base colour where the shader had settled it all over it, which was perfect. It gave it a nice even darkness, So now I'm just painting back in the lighter bits, the more raised parts. So that's both edges where it's sort of wrapped up and the flat bit across the back, leaving the shader in the recesses. Then we're going to give an additional highlight to the to his sleeping bag, and this is elf green and mouldy clothes mixed about 50-50. I'm using my insane detail brush here because I do really want to catch the very edges of the sort of fold, that spiral effect that you get when you roll up a sleeping bag. So I'm just catching the edges of that with that brighter highlight. As with most of my heroes, all of my heroes, it's in Massive Darkness and Zombicide. I'm just going to paint the base black, and I'm going to use my regiment brush and the handy model holder to keep twirling it round. So that was quite cool, quite handy there. While doing his base, I did notice I didn't like his hair quite enough. I just didn't feel like it popped enough. So I've taken Leather Brown, Survivor Shader, mixed it 50-50. That gives quite a cool orangey brown effect. And I'm just going to add small highlights to each bit of his hair, as well as the top of all of the straps there. Just slide him off my model holder there. I'm just showing you how he looks. This is completely finished now, so let me know how you feel about him in the comments below. Hopefully you liked it. It only took me 1 hour and 28 minutes, this one. Not my fastest, but he was quite big, although like he's a small model, but he's got a lot of surface area to cover, so it takes quite a long time. You have to let me know in the comments below how you feel, because there's definitely other Owens on YouTube. Is it a waste of my time doing a model that already exists? As I said, I had already started it, but should I have just abandoned it and not wasted my time editing the video? Or is it great to see another sort of perspective on painting the model? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all very much for watching, and catch you next week.